Welcome to Campfire Academy. I'm Andrew Craissati. Today, we're talking about the board's role in investor relations.
How should boards think about their role in supporting modern investor communication?
Well, the majority of a board of directors is not a direct participant in the modern world of investor communications and engagement. It's largely and traditionally a role that is focused on the chairperson and on the chief executive, supported by the chief financial officer. However, the board in its entirety feeds into the editorial direction of that information, and it has to support the chairperson in their task. A board, therefore, has to take a view on understanding how a story is perhaps lacking in context and how that context might prove to be transformative in making sure that the investor audience fully and accurately appreciates the editorial aspect of the communication in question. So a board decidedly plays a role in helping to build the narrative structure around a quarterly set of results and information that is in between quarterly outcomes.
Where does board accountability intersect with transparency and storytelling?
So let's take a moment to look at the intersection between accountability with transparency or storytelling. Whether this is vested in the board or the CEO or the IR head, that's for the company to determine together with their lawyers and advisors. But the truth is that there is a difference between each of storytelling, transparency, and accountability. Accountability is really a form of responsibility to making sure that when you are building a narrative for your investors or for the market, that you are doing so with integrity and with legal astuteness. You want to be mindful of the input you're getting from your legal advisors and your investment bankers, but at the same time, you are also trying to get across the unique story that is your company. And that story needs to be told properly. It isn't exclusively the financial results for that quarter, for example. It may well be the story of how you're progressing in developing your technology. It may be a discussion on how you are embracing artificial intelligence and bringing that into the functionality within your business. While that may well intersect with your financial performance going forward, it is nevertheless context, and context is critical in making sure your audience fully understands you, nuances and all. Transparency is also a key part of all of this. So you want the shareholder or the prospective investor to fully understand who you are, what your intentions are, what the future looks like. If you've had a problem, you want to be transparent about what that problem was. And so this intersection is really a case of finding the right blend of accountability, transparency, and storytelling. Storytelling doesn't trump accountability, and transparency doesn't trump accountability. It is finding the right blend between the three. But bear in mind that if you look at a company like a Tesla, for example, so much of the narrative around Tesla is forward-looking. It's getting the audience excited in the potential for Tesla. And that requires a very carefully designed, forward-looking storytelling about the future.
How can boards empower leadership to communicate more effectively without crossing compliance lines?
So when you think about the responsibility of a board in directing the leadership of the company as it relates to communications, the board has a real responsibility here. On the one hand, the board is really the ultimate governor of legal, regulatory compliance issues. Are you correctly disclosing the information Are you compliant with how the applicable laws in that jurisdiction work, etc.? But you are also perhaps encouraging a form of curated creativity. You're encouraging a fresh look at how do we tell our story. Maybe there is an interview with a happy customer. Maybe we want to get to know the employees better and we want a little interview with the newly hired general manager who works out at the plant in Cardiff. Whatever it may be, there is this blend that the board needs to be reflecting on how to empower management and leadership to drive the messaging across the financial markets, and to do so in a manner that feels prudent, but not overly conservative.
What mistakes do boards often make when it comes to IR oversight or messaging?
So when you think about mistakes, boards do sometimes make mistakes, particularly when it comes to the oversight of investor relations or messaging. There's a really interesting story at the moment in the news where the BBC in the UK has got itself into terrible trouble with the Trump administration over a documentary that they produced in which they mistakenly spliced together some content that fudged the line between what was honestly said by President Trump and the impression that the program created as a result of the editing that it did. If you're in crisis in a moment like the BBC is, as I talk to you, then messaging becomes critical. How swift are you in your response? What is the scale of your response? How brave or bold are you in dealing with the issue? Are you frightened by the audience? And is your tendency, therefore, to shy away from the crisis? Mistakes come when boards opt to be too conservative or too defensive. And they should, in fact, find a tone of voice that is the perfect blend of a mistake has been made, we're addressing it, we're apologetic, we're building a path towards the future, and at the same time, blending all of that with the notion that the BBC has been an organisation of over 100 years standing and is still today polled globally as being the most trusted brand in news. So the board's role, and this is a great example, is to make sure that all of those different messages come across.
Can you provide any stories or examples of where board involvement either improved or even hindered investor trust?
So if you think about outcomes of where the board has either helped or hurt investor trust, there's a really interesting case study out there regarding the board of directors of Tesla and its role in approving the employment package, the incentive package for Elon Musk. In that particular case, the board was swift to embrace the idea that Mr. Musk was entitled to a world record shattering package of incentives. As was subsequently shown to be the case, the courts did not share the view of the board, and when a shareholder took the whole issue to court in Delaware, the courts sided with the shareholder and not with the board. So board involvement in that particular case clearly created an impediment to how Mr. Musk built his own narrative with his shareholders and how it led to significant and high-profile litigation. So the board clearly plays a role in the communication of important stories and building a trust-based relationship with all of its shareholders. And that goes both ways. There are stories where the board has really helped and where it's hindered.
Could you tell me a bit about how technology like Campfire or similar analytics could help boards stay informed without micromanaging?
So when you think about the flow of information by a public company or a publicly quoted investment trust, it's really important to really understand what is happening to that information as it flows. And one of the real frustrations that the market has today is the lack of analytics in understanding how information is consumed, where it is consumed, what time of day it's consumed. Do people digest everything that is put in front of them? Do they just go straight to the highlights? Having analytics helps a board of directors become a more effective communicator because it empowers them to learn about what works, what doesn't work, how long content should be, how frequently it should be distributed. And of course, at the end of the day, it helps inform as to the creative or editorial aspect of the content itself. So understanding the distribution of information is critical to being a successful communicator.
What should listeners be asking themselves as they put some of these insights into practice?
So when you think about what we're talking about today, it's really important that if you are a director or you're connected to a board of directors, you want to be thinking about your responsibility in the flow of communications, because you have that responsibility and you can assert yourself as a member of the board to make sure that your company that you govern is effective, authentic, and full of integrity in what it does. It's really important that you think about context. A story changes dramatically as a result of context. Getting those nuances right and understanding the narrative is really, really important. So if your leadership is resisting the idea of pushing more out through investor relations or doesn't value the role of analytics, challenge them and really understand your own role in investor relations and how you can empower as a result. This has been Campfire Academy, an Audi production. To learn more about how you can capture investor attention and stay top of mind, visit audi.com.